The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we have some very exciting news regarding Austin FC's next head coach. We'll also be joined by Austin FC President Andy Loughnane to chat a little bit about this news, but also talking about Austin FC's World Cup plans and some fan feedback on season tickets and the stadium experience overall. And to tease a little bit, Andy will tell us a little bit about some impact that Moon Tower Soccer has had on the fan experience. My name is Landon and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. I'm happy to be here. This is another one of those weeks where I think yesterday, or maybe the day before, I texted you, and I'm like, I don't have anything for the opening news segment of the week. Maybe Jaden Nelson's going to be on Canada's roster. Maybe they're not. I don't know what's going to happen. And then today happened, and we have so much to talk about, and I love that.
Yeah. So Jim Curtin has been named as Austin FC's next head coach. We'll get into some of the details of that here in a second. We were trying to decide if or when we were going to talk about other news that happened this week. There's only a couple of spots, so we're just going to jump in right now and cover that. It's mostly to do with international call-ups. Jaden Nelson, as we were recording last week, we were speculating like, okay, there's an injury to an attacker. Maybe Jaden could get the call-up. Before we finished recording the show, he had scored for Canada. And so we were thinking like, okay, maybe by the time we get this next show out, he will actually officially be on the roster. That has still not happened. They've had another injury to Moise Bombito. And so there's a chance maybe he's going to get called in, but Jesse Marsh sounds like he's going to wait until the last possible second to see if these guys who have been injured will be able to go and to make that decision. I think it's 24 hours before the first game when he will need to make that decision. I'm not sure if that will be true for the following game as well, or if they have to lock it in for that first game, but we still don't know if he's officially in. And that is also true for Facu Torres, where Uruguay had an injury, and there's some speculation that he might be one of the options. We have not heard that either. So we still might have Austin FC players at the World Cup, but we'll find out later this week.
Oh, yeah, we will. And the one other player news I think that I just want to talk about briefly before I talk about the really biggest news of the week is that Mirto Orzuni was out sick for the Albania friendly. We also had him out mysteriously for the last Austin FC match, which leads me to the cue a transfer somewhere else is done, and he just wants to stay healthy machine. Is this part of that, or what do you think?
I think it might have helped that case if he didn't play in the next friendly. Did he? Am I right that he appeared in the following friendly?
He did. I forgot that part of it. Yeah. So probably not. Maybe he just had, whatever.
He had to travel to do a physical and to sign the paperwork.
Right.
So,
Let's go with that. I think anybody that's talks about the sporting director knows that's the biggest piece open. I was going to say the biggest news is that I played in the Laundry Project Butler Pitch and Putt golf tournament, which was really fun. And also had to take some consequences, which a friend of the show, Elise, pointed out. She was the one delivering them to us, and mine was very difficult, is that I had to play the whole hole with a putter. And then when we got on the green, we had to do a pool shot where we had to putt with the end of the club as if we were taking a shot with a pool cue. But it was fun because our group was my friend Luke and me and Steph and Mike and Tony Cardoni and David from Los Verdes. And it was funny because one of the punishments was heckling, and Mike got this one, but we'd been heckling him nonstop throughout the whole thing. So he's I don't even know what this is.
Mike's been preparing for this his whole life.
Right. Oh, and Jackson Bentley caddied and also felt free to talk trash to everybody nonstop all the time. So that was fun.
I saw a video of your drive with a putter, and it looked pretty impressive.
Yeah. That's actually my best drive all day long, and Jackson tried to never give me another club and told me I had to hit with a putter the whole time because I was bad on everything else. But we should probably talk about this news we got at 1 o'clock this afternoon on social media, which was welcome to Austin, Jim Curtin, which I think was completely unexpected to both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into who Jim Curtin is, and then as the day this show is coming out, which is Tuesday, there's actually a press conference scheduled with Jim Curtin. This is going to be virtual, I think via Zoom. So I would imagine he's not actually going to be in Austin, but great that we're going to get access to him here so soon. But we have not heard that yet. That has not happened yet, so we can't include any information about that yet. We'll have to wait until next week for all of that. But there's still a lot to talk about. This is a big hire for Austin FC. Folks who have paid attention to MLS for any of the last decade will know who Jim Curtin is and kind of the respect he has earned in this league. I think it shows ambition from Austin FC to not only go after him, but to be able to convince him to join and be a part of the project, because this is a coach who, when he got fired at Philly, and we'll talk about kind of how all that went down here in a bit, but any team with an opening since that day has reached out to Jim Curtin, and folks like Tom Bogert have reported like, okay, he hasn't been interested for this reason, he hasn't been interested for this reason, whatever. And Austin FC gets an opening, and we were the ones to actually be able to reel him in. I'm sure timing has something to do with that, but all that said, this is a guy who did not have to take the next available coaching position. He wants to be here, and that's encouraging that Austin FC was able to entice a guy like him.
Yeah, and this touches on something that we speculated on with David Goss last week when we were talking about all the openings. And like in our head, Austin seems like a great job for the reasons that we all love Austin and an ownership group that wants to spend and a great stadium and a great fan base. And Goss kind of agreed with us. And then when you read a lot of the quotes from Jim Curtin about why he's coming, which were probably written by the PR team, but that's fine. Like that reinforces a lot of it. So it's really, really good to hear. So just quickly, for those of you that don't know a lot about him, Landon touched on the fact that he was really successful. So he spent a decade in charge of Philadelphia Union, two-time MLS Coach of the Year. I think it's 2020 and 2022. Won the Supporter Shield in 2020, which means they had the best regular season of any club in the league. And then in 2022, they made it the MLS Cup final. It's like the only thing that Gareth Bale ever did productively in all of Major League Soccer was beat Philadelphia, which is score that goal, which is terrible for him. Three-time US Open Cup finalist. I think it was like 7 playoff appearances in 6 and 7 years, like super consistently one of the best teams in the league. And this note that you wrote, also one of the lowest spending teams in the league, and a team that relied a lot on academy and other ways to bring players up. And I feel like maybe this is one of the best things where like this is not Austin's profile. Like Austin's maybe willing to do that in Curtin's image and also willing to spend money on the top of the roster. So maybe positioning for him for even more success.
Yeah, and one of the big questions over the last couple of years was around Jim Curtin was he was let go after a really successful stint. They had one bad season and he was fired. And they were able to kind of continue that success the following year with a new coach, with Bradley Carnell. And then the following year, though, like this season, they've been very bad. And so I think when he left, there was a lot of questions of, okay, is Jim Curtin actually that good? Or was it the Philadelphia front office, their academy system that was propping him up and making him look that good? And when they were successful the year after he left, I think I don't think it like 100% endorsed that opinion, because I think there was enough of a body of work and enough people who have known of or know Jim Curtin to say like, he's a good coach, he's going to be fine. But then you see the state of Philadelphia now, where they've kind of fallen off. The sporting director, Ernst Tanner, who there was lots of reports that Tanner and Curtin did not get along, and that was Tom Bogert's assumption of why Curtin got fired, is because he was deviating away from this playing style that Ernst Tanner was very dogmatic about, and that they weren't getting along. The coach wanted to do a different thing. Okay, we didn't have a good season. This is my chance to get rid of you and bring in someone who's going to do what I want to do. fast forward 2 years, and Ernst Tanner has been banished from the league for apparently being a terrible person, and
Right.
the Philadelphia Union are one of the worst teams in the league. So I don't want to say that Jim Curtin was the only reason they were good, but I think there's some evidence to say like he was one of the reasons they were good, and all these people who thought and said he was a good coach are probably right.
So I'm going to ask you. I am going to ask you to get into specifics of it in just a second, but I want to get one more point out of the press release, and is that he will not be here until 2027. So they were very clear upon the conclusion of the 2026 season. Who'll be the head coach? I think they even named a specific date, December 1st to December 2nd. I don't remember. Two reasons that's important, or maybe true, is one, we've heard that he didn't want to move from the East Coast, and it was related to family things. So he didn't want to move his kids to interrupt their school experience or whatever. And
Yeah, there was like early reports that was the reason, and then later reports as to why he wasn't interested in certain jobs just cited family reasons. So maybe we'll get more information about that in the press conference, but it's unclear exactly why he didn't want to move aside from family reasons.
And then the other thing is he is living my dream where he's under contract with Philly through 2026, so he's still getting paid to work or not work until then. So like, why not rush back into it? I get that 100%.
Yeah, I don't know how much that's playing into the his decision to not take a job until that point, but it gives him the flexibility to decide if he wants to take a job until that point for sure.
Yeah.
And he's a rare coach who is fairly active on Instagram. And if you go through his Instagram, he's been living his best life, taking his kids to sporting events and going on vacation. So like, hey man, if Philadelphia wants to pay you to go on vacation with your kids, go for it.
Yeah, Andy's going to talk about this when we do this interview, but he's seems like an interesting, fully formed human, which you don't necessarily always get from like coaches, right? Who are just soccer robots. And I don't mean specifically about people who've been here before, but like he's just like he's a real dude with like a whole life. And so like you can understand why having this time with his kids might be valuable to him. So let's get on to why we should all be excited about Jim Curtin.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it a bit earlier, but in Philadelphia, he was able to win without without having the backing of a front office to spend a lot of money for him. Like he brought in either players through their academy and was able to integrate them, or unknown players from Europe or elsewhere and bring them in, integrate them, and turn them into household names like MLS stars in this league. If you look at players who have come in as young players under him and have gone on to do varying degrees of big things, but are all very successful players. Mark McKenzie, Austin Trusty, Jack Elliott, Brendan Aronson, Jack McGlynn, Nathan Harriel, Matt Freese was there as a backup for a few seasons. Quinn Sullivan, who was kind of having a breakout year and got injured, and then Paxton Aronson. And probably some others that I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah, Brandon Craig.
Yeah, there you go. But if you count how many of these guys are on the current United States national team or were on like this short list of names who didn't quite make it, it's most of the guys I just mentioned. And then the others are doing quite well for themselves as well. So I don't think you can you can't give him all of the credit for it. I think the front office deserves credit for the scouting. The academy deserves credit for being able to develop these players before they get into the first team, but you still need a coach who is willing and able to integrate these kind of players into the first team and use them in a way that sets them up for success. And he's been able to do that over and over and over.
Well, then we touched a little bit on him as a person. Like you had some notes too on like his personality and sort of charisma and why he would be a good choice for any team and why we're probably really going to grow to enjoy him in Austin.
Yeah, Andy we'll talk about this in the interview that you're hearing in a bit, but again, folks who have paid a lot of attention to MLS will not need to be sold on this guy. If you've seen press conferences, if you've heard him talk, if you've seen the way he carries himself, he is charismatic, but not necessarily in like a people pleasing kind of way. Like he's a Philly guy. He's got that toughness to him, but you also want to like him. And You can see how that kind of personality would be good for a manager, like someone who's trying to motivate a group of players and encourage a group of young players and integrate them in. I think that combination of characteristics is really good and probably a big part of why he has been so successful. And also, just
Yeah,
from a media perspective, Phil West talks about this in his article, and I think he's good with media. He'll treat you fairly. He'll give you information. It's and he's just kind of fun and interesting to listen to talk. So I think we're gonna have a good time with him.
yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I guess we'll get a little tease of that tomorrow. Why he's interested in it. We touched on that a little bit about why we thought this club would be appealing, but this was in the release. I had several other opportunities in MLS and abroad. None of it excited me the way we did. Austin's unique. The club has some of the finest facilities and greatest venues. Supporters, the atmosphere is something he doesn't take lightly. The passion is known across the league. And our goal is to give you a team that fights and makes you proud every time we take the field. That is really good to hear too.
Yeah, and it's the press release, so there's some PR spin.
Oh,
There's
right.
some puffiness to it, but I think a lot of the language, it's specific enough that you couldn't necessarily say all of these things about any team. Um, and so again, with a grain of salt because it's in the press release, but I think there's some good signaling in this statement from him.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch on with Andy a little bit is the sporting director search. And I feel like this is the thing that gave some of the people the most heartburn, although I think this is completely explainable because optimally you hire your sporting director first. But when you have a chance like Jim Curtin, I would think maybe we said this when we were talking about Goss. I feel like Wilfred Nancy and Jim Curtin were the two people that I'm like, if they're available and want the job, you hire them. And then you worry about sporting director for a couple of reasons. One, like you have to take advantage of the opportunity. And two, like any sporting director that isn't a moron is going to want to work with Jim Curtin. Like, like expand on that.
I would honestly say Jim Curtin in that metric, as far as like any sporting director would want to work with him. I would say I would put Curtin above Nancy in that regard, just because what Nancy does is so specific, and you need to bring in a very specific set of players to make what he wants to do work. And some sporting directors might not mesh with that very well, or might not be interested in kind of changing what they want to do to fit with a manager like that. I think Curtin, although he does have a reputation and his teams have a reputation for what they were good at, I don't think he's as dogmatic as a lot of people maybe paint him to be, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But as far as like coaches, you would be comfortable putting that first, like putting that part first. I think this is definitely one of the guys, and I think this will allow Austin to attract other sporting directors, and when they know, like, okay, this guy is one of the guys I would have looked for anyway, and we know that like folks within the league were interested in him, including Atlanta United. That was one of the first teams that came up whenever he got fired. Was Atlanta has a coaching opening, and Tom Bogert was reporting Atlanta is interested. If Curtin wants it, it's his essentially. And Curtin turned it down. Who was working at Atlanta at the time was Garth Lagerwey. And so not sure if he was the one driving that interest, but it seems like he was at least open to working with Jim Curtin at some point. So this is speculation and maybe wish casting a little bit, but I could see a reality where Garth Lagerwey is more attracted to this job because we hired Jim Curtin, and not just him, probably others, but including him.
God, my head would explode if that was like if that's how it turned out. The other thing that we got news that I think people speculated on, that we got news from Tom Bogert today, is that Jim Curtin will be an active participant in the sporting director hiring search. Although to imagine it's pretty well underway, but like, yeah, I can see definitely him having input and them valuing his input. So I'm not too surprised by that, but it's worth noting.
Especially after his experience in Philadelphia, where he did not get along with the sporting director.
Right.
And then also Austin's experience, where our sporting directors and coaches were seemingly not always on the same page. That, yeah, if this is guys available and you're going to pull the trigger now, make sure he's on board with who you're going to bring on for that hire. Even if that feels a little bit backwards, like this is a guy you're willing to change that process a little bit for. And yeah, like having him involved in the process of finding someone who will allow him to be the best that he can be.
Okay, well, let's now, you talked about this a couple minutes ago. Let's talk about what people should look for in terms of his playing style, maybe in terms of his band management too, but I feel like we've covered that part. So like how we've seen how his system has played out, but like how do you see it maybe shifting, or like should we expect the exact same thing in Austin?
Yeah, so he's most known for intense pressing system, forcing and capitalizing on transition moments. Like that is what his most successful teams were really good at. I think the question is like, will he try to do that in Austin? And a bigger question for me is, would that even work in the Austin climate? I know with the schedule change, we won't be playing as many summer games, but it's still really hot in April and May a lot of the times. It's still really hot in October a lot of the time. So asking players to do a lot of really high intensity sprints on the defensive side of the ball is a lot to ask of any team, and especially in such a hot place as Austin. So I think it's a big question of whether or not it's a good idea to implement that kind of thing. But I think it's also not set in stone that that's what he will try to do, because he did not necessarily play that style before Ernst Tanner was hired in 2021. So he had several years as a head coach before Ernst Tanner came in and said, hey, this is how we want to play. And Curtin was able to implement that system and do really well with it. But also part of why the reporting was like part of why him and Tanner weren't getting along towards the end is Curtin was trying to kind of do a little bit of something different towards the end, and it wasn't quite working yet, but Tanner wasn't having any of it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Curtin came in and either for personal preference reasons or for climate reasons tried to do something a little bit different than what he did in those years in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I want to bring up, we said it was brought on when Ernst Tanner came on in 2021. I've seen some talk about how, well, that's when the success came, but they won the Supporters Shield and he was coach of the year before, right? In 2020. So it's like, you can't just say that he like played Ernst Tanner's system. That's why they had the success that they had. So that does make me think that there's a lot of potential for him to be able to react to the players that we have and the players we're gonna acquire, and just the fact that he's tactically good and a good motivator people feels like maybe he's the combination of the two coaches that Austin has had in its history so far. That we've talked about how like if you could just like get Nico's approach to people and Josh Wolf's approach to tactics, like you might actually have a really good coach. Like it seems like maybe we're actually finally getting that for Austin, which is awesome.
And he might be better at both of those things than both of those guys.
Both of those things and either of those guys too. That is absolutely true. Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
I think one of the big questions, or like I guess like the biggest bummer of this whole thing is the fact that he's not starting until 2027. Davey Arnaud will be in charge. But I had a few people reached out via social media and then just some group chats that I'm in. One of the biggest refrains that I heard was like, why should we care about the rest of this season if like the major changes aren't going to come until the end of this season? I mean, we were all kind of hoping that someone could come in and turn this team around. Like, no disrespect to Davey, but like he's been the coach under these guys who were doing the things we didn't like. I don't think it would be reasonable to expect him to like do this big 180 change for the rest of this season. And then also like, even if he tries to, would he be able to?
That is a very fair question. And I get back to, I think some player that gave this an interview years ago, maybe Ethan Finley, that even when the club has effectively nothing to play for, like there's a lot of guys who are auditioning to either keep their job with a new coach or who are auditioning like for their next job who should care. And I assume at some point, Davey Arnaud wants to not be the interim coach when somebody else gets fired and wants to be a head coach. And I feel like the most hope I have for this team through the rest of 2026 is that all the stuff that we talked about happening potentially when we had this World Cup break and Owen finally got healthy and Brandon finally got healthy and Robert Taylor was back and Jaden Nelson was able to go, that just the combination of people getting healthy and being available, and the Western Conference being kind of a mess, and like those guys being motivated by wanting a job, and Davey getting motivated by wanting a job leads you to maybe like you should still care about the rest of 2026 as a fan, because it's not outside the realm of possibility. This club is going to find its way in the playoffs, do something in the cup competition, and still have a fun year this year and have something to look forward to in 2027.
Yeah, and I would imagine the plan is to whoever the sporting director hire is that they would start sooner than 2027. I would hope so, that would be the
Right.
case. And they would be
This
getting
roster's got
input.
some stuff.
Yeah, they would be getting input from Curtin. They'll be limited in what they can do, but we've talked about this. This roster's not bad as far as the number of talented players. They just fit together weird. So I think with a couple of moves, you could, and then with these guys coming back to full fitness, you could have a pretty talented team that maybe then they could at least get the playoffs and give us a little bit of a show in the second half of this season. But I think it's a totally fair sentiment to say, like, yeah, it's hard to get all that excited for the rest of this season.
Right. It's the vibes could be very week to week, right? For sure. In a way that they wouldn't necessarily be like going into 2027. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of build up in that off season. And it's gonna be very much like, was this week a good week or a bad week? We're gonna react to that. And hopefully we start with some good weeks, because it could get kind of bleak otherwise.
One question that I think will be interesting to hear, maybe in tomorrow's press conference or in later ones, is like how much input will Curtin have for the next 6 months? Like, is he going to be on the phone with Davey saying like, hey, this is kind of what I have in mind. Can you start working on that kind of thing? Like, would Davey be open to that? Would Jim be open to that? Like, I don't know what the dynamics are there. I would admit, like, Arnaud is not in the position where he's going to be getting calls for head coaching jobs, I would imagine. And so I would guess he's maybe even auditioning for an assistant coaching position here in Austin or elsewhere. And so I could see a reality where he is talking to Curtin and saying like, hey, what do you want to do? I'll start laying the groundwork. And we're not starting from zero once you get here in January. Like, do you think that's realistic, or is that me being too hopeful?
I mean, I think in the broadest terms it's realistic, because if I'm Davey Arnaud, having Jim Curtin say good things about me is good for my future, whether in Austin or somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
why not? Why not establish that connection and relationship and, maybe learn, something from him about the way he approaches the things that he's done, because he's got all this experience. So I would think that Davey would be open to it. I think it probably comes down to like how much of Jim's free time that he has left he wants to spend committing to the Austin project, but it pays off for him in the long term if he is more engaged.
Yeah, and it seems like he could, with, I want to say minimal effort, but without him having to move here and start implementing it himself, like, could put together a training package, put together
Yep.
kind of a playbook for Davey to be working from. And again, maybe this is all unrealistic and not what's going to happen, but it seems possible.
Yeah, watch some games, make some phone calls, document your ideas. Like, it doesn't seem that unrealistic, because it sets him up for a position to succeed in the future too. So regardless,
it opens up
excited.
some interesting conversations as this season progresses, though. Like, if we don't get a clear answer as to whether or not that is happening, it's like, okay, this game went weird. Do we blame Davey or do we blame Jim?
Right. I don't know, man. If we're going to blame Davey, I would guess, based upon the Austin fan base, it's like whoever the coach is right now, they're the problem.
Yeah. I do all that. I do think this isn't ideal. Nobody wants to wait this long for the guy to come in, but I think this is one of the guys you wait for. And this caliber of reputation, of body of work doesn't come available very often. And if one of them is willing to work for you in 6
Go
months,
for it, right?
I think you say yes. So it's unfortunate. It's going to be annoying. It might be a little bit painful, but I think in the long term, it's probably the right decision, even if it feels bad.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking, like, this is the truth of our entire Austin FC fan experience. going all the way back to like, could we have started playing in 2020 at Dell Diamond, or like, was it better to wait an extra year to have our own club playing in our own stadium? And it feels like a little bit of that like delayed gratification again, which ultimately turned out to be the best choice for everyone and gave us some great moments that wouldn't have been true if it had been rushed into. So like, I'm hoping this is the same thing all over again.
Yeah. All right. Should we go on to the interview here, Jeremiah?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a break and go into the interview.
Let's set up the interview a little bit here real quick.
Okay.
So we so we're going to be joined by Austin FC president Andy Loughnane. I think it should be I don't know, put on the table that Andy Loughnane's job as president oversees the business side of Austin FC. And so that was kind of the original idea for this interview a few weeks ago. And then a bunch of stuff happened in Austin FC world, and it felt like an awkward time to talk about those kinds of things. Luckily, we had it scheduled for today, and this coaching news came out today. So we do get to talk to Andy about the process of hiring Jim Curtin. And he was actually involved in the process some, but I think you should be aware that that is not Andy's job before, and it will not be going forward, the sporting side. He is more on the business side, and that is what a lot of this interview is going to be about. But we do talk a little bit about the coaching search, about his experience with Jim Curtin, and kind of the guy we can expect to get here in Austin. Any other table setting we should do, Jeremiah?
No, that's a great setup. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll take our first break.
When no one is around.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community. Amplify has been the home of free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balance. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending. Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Esperance branch on game day, visit goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back, and we are very pleased to be joined by Austin FC president Andy Loughnane. Andy, thanks for being here, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we got some big news this morning. So we want to talk to you about a few other things, including this 2027 being kind of a transition year. Talk about some stadium feedback and some of the plans for the World Cup watch parties that Austin FC has going on. But we have to start off with this news from today, which is Austin FC has hired Jim Curtin to be the new head coach starting in 2027. I know that you are not, like, your primary job is not on the sporting side of things for Austin FC, but I believe you were involved at least partially in this process. What can you tell us about this process, your involvement in it, and just the process in general of finding Curtin and convincing him to join the project?
Like most important decisions made in the club, this is ownership led. And from a process perspective, after the dismissals occurred a few weeks ago, Anthony reached out to Jim and had some very good conversations. And then Anthony had me have conversations with Jim. And from a process point of view, you're right. Under normal circumstances, as the president that is primarily responsible for overseeing the business operations, I wouldn't normally, let's say, put together the deal for our head coach, but under the circumstances, that was the assignment. So at some point from a process perspective, Anthony passed it over to me, and I worked with Jim on trying to finalize a deal. He's extraordinarily amazing to deal with. I just want to highlight that. And I suppose in, a few short weeks, we were able to reach an agreement. There's so much alignment, by the way, that I don't want to say it was easy because it wasn't, but there's so much alignment that I'm excited about the future. And when you work with somebody in these types of moments, you just get a sense as to what their character is. It exceeded all of my expectations. Fans are going to love Jim, and soon we'll get to hear from him. But from a process point of view, that's how it all played itself out.
Well, I think, and let's not focus on the resume because I think we all kind of know that, but you've alluded to this really quickly. Like, what do you know about Jim Curtin as a human, maybe? Like, what impressed you through this process? And like, I know we are going to get the chance to hear from him today in listener time, tomorrow in real time, but like, what things should people look for and sort of really appreciate about Jim Curtin?
Well, I think nearly anybody who's ever come in contact with him would say that he's extraordinarily professional, smart, caring, and wants to win, and applies very unique resources sometimes and innovation sometimes to get to the point where he is winning. Those are great skills, great attributes, but in particular on the human side, it's something that we value. And Jim's reputation is impeccable. Then you build on top of that his 10-year track record in Philadelphia, where he qualified for the playoffs, I think it was 7 of 10 times, made 3 U.S. Open Cup appearances, U.S. Open Cup final appearances. They, of course, won the Supporter Shield. They reached a MLS Cup final and were, basically a hair away from winning that thing. He has an extraordinary track record. And by the way, to 10 years with any one given MLS club says something, and it says something good. But he is a very smart, very caring, and extremely resourceful person. And these are great attributes.
So part of this this hiring, it was announced that he will not start until the 2026 season is over. Davy Arnaud will continue as interim manager until that point. We've had listeners reach out and say, like, what does this mean for the rest of the season? Like, why should we care about the rest of this year, knowing that none of these changes are going to take place until this next season? Well, what would your response be to that?
First of all, when you have a coach, the talent, the pedigree, the experience of Jim Curtin, somebody who we had at the highest level of our target list, that person was available. We wanted to make certain that his services were secured for reasons that he will discuss. He was unable to begin until after the season, but this is the easiest decision that we had to make in this process. Jim is that good, that important to a future. This allows us to clarify, solidify our future while also putting a lot of faith in Davy that we can, as Anthony pointed out in his quote, we can climb the standings, we can compete for a playoff position, and we can make a run. These are all things that are possible. If you look at the standings, I get it. We are towards the bottom, and I get it. We have not been on the best recent run. But there are 19 matches left. We have the opportunity to rebound. Nobody is giving up on this season. We think highly of Davy. Davy has been with our club since day one. I would like for Davy to be with our club beyond the 2026 season. We think very highly of him. He would not be at the helm if he didn't have the ability to navigate through the end of this season. So what I would say is Jim, again, will probably do a better job of answering this question himself through his press conference, but he is the person we want long-term, and this is the right decision to make near-term.
Well, let's so there's 2 positions to be hired. So you've cleared one, right? And I think there were questions about sort of the order of operations on this, and I think you touched on the point, like, well, you can get a guy like Jim Curtin, you just go for it. It's like, do you have any insights you can share on the next steps of the sporting director?
So it's underway. It's probably a process that we would have said under normal circumstances would take anywhere from 45 to 90 days. I'm giving you a range that it could end up being 45 to 120 days. I think this is one where when you have the right person, you make the hire. I do think there are there's going to be no surprise here, but there's been quite a bit of interest in this position. We are going to take our time to sort through the right candidates to emerge as those that we have conversations with. And to be fair, there are a fair amount of people, and so it's just going to take a little bit of time. And there are reasons why we've hired a search firm to assist with us, or assist with the process. One is to help accelerate the process. The other, of course, is to expand the search. But we're going to do this in a very pragmatic way. We do recognize there are some urgencies involved. On the other hand, we're going to be as patient as it requires.
So you got my application, and I'm waiting for the call. Is that? That's what I took out of that. Like, take all the time you need, Andy. Like, I'm available.
You haven't made a list. I don't know what that says, and I'm sorry that I have to deliver the news live to your audience.
But one other concern that I've heard from fans is that I think just kind of common, I don't know, general wisdom is that you want to hire a sporting director before you hire a coach, or let the sporting director be involved in hiring the coach. Full disclosure, I think Curtin is the kind of guy that you make an exception for, but I think it's a valid concern. I don't want to disregard those concerns. Like, what would you say to those folks?
Well, you're exactly right. Jim's on a short list of known entities across Major League Soccer that would clear that hurdle. And what we believe is that Jim actually widens the pool of people who would be not only interested in the job, but would be willing to take the job. So he's a magnet. And as a result of him being a magnet, that's important. And so again, we believe that he will be part of our future. And we think any sporting director who understands this league and understands the culture that Jim has been associated with across his 10-year career in Philadelphia would want to be working alongside Jim. And so we think it's actually a pretty strong pressure test to have anybody, go through the process. And if for some reason they had any discomfort with Jim Curtin, I think that's maybe a flag. And we, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're today old in terms of people knowing this news, but what we believe pretty firmly is that Jim actually increases the likelihood of somebody wanting to take the job, and that's not a nothing consideration. That's actually a very important consideration.
Yeah, I was having some conversations with folks earlier today, and my guess was, maybe there are some sporting director candidates who would maybe be less interested because they're not going to get to pick their own coach. But I would also guess a lot of the people y'all are reaching out to, if you hired them first, the first thing they would try to do is like, hey, can we try to hire Jim Curtin?
Yeah, I agree. Again, we haven't had the benefit of having these conversations yet, but we're pretty entrenched in our position that he increases the likelihood of somebody wanting to say yes.
So I know we're going to hear from Jim Curtin, like Jeremiah said, today as listeners are listening to this, and we'll get more information straight from him and get to discuss that more next week. But let's talk about this coming year, 2027. It's going to be an interesting one, this first year that Jim Curtin is in charge. And the reason it's going to be interesting is because of this calendar switch. So I think most of our listeners will understand this, but just in case you haven't been paying attention, what's going to happen is MLS is switching their calendar. They're going to be doing a fall to spring calendar in order to get to that new, fresh starting point. The 2027 spring will be a sprint season, a shortened version of the MLS season in order to fill that time, which will lead into the new calendar. Andy, tell me if I got anything wrong there, but also
I know perfect elevator pitch. You nailed it. Literally, you nailed it.
I know y'all have been doing a lot of research. Y'all did some surveys to try to figure out how best to handle this transition. Talk to us about what y'all learned from this research and how y'all are going to use that to implement changes and kind of approach this kind of strange year that's coming up.
Yep. So one of the things that we want to measure just was, basic levels of understanding. And as you point out, your audience is pretty familiar with the change, but we had to substantiate that. And over
I think our audience versus everyone who goes to an Austin FC game is not 1-to-1. So yeah.
And you know what we did? So this, you referenced the survey. We actually got well over 1,000 responses, which, just to highlight the statistical, validity of the response. It's not, we did not get just, Landon and Jeremiah responding to us. So we had over 1,000 responses that were collected. Extremely high sample size in terms of operating a survey that counts. But over 80% of those who responded had a positive sentiment on the calendar change. That's important. And I don't know if that's, the same answer that you're going to get in every other market, but in our market, very high sentiment. And 85%, they said they will attend the same or more matches. Like actually 20% of people responded saying they're going to attend more matches in light of this change. That's a really interesting highlight. By the way, we do think in our market, we play games in some of the warmest months in Texas. And as a result of moving to this new calendar format, we're going to play slightly fewer games in warmer months. We're not eliminating warm game months, let's be clear, but we're probably going to add a few more games in what I'll call the shoulder portions of the calendar, of the new calendar. And it will inevitably lead to slightly cooler match temps, which I think is a good thing. And clearly at least 20% of the people think it's a good thing. One thing that was interesting is we also tried to understand people's interest in this concept of combining the what we'll call the the sprint season, the 7-game home package in the sprint season with the 27-28 season, which would be a normal 17 home game portion schedule. So we tried to understand what people's preferences were. And when presented with the question, if there was a discount and we combined the 7-game sprint season and the 17-game, talking about home games, 27-28 season, would you be interested? And 85% said they were interested in combining if there was a discount. And that was extremely important data for us. I will, on a personal level, tell you that number was way higher than I expected, but that informed the responses, or that informed how we proceeded, I should say. One other thing that we were trying to understand, and this is going to be important as well, is to understand how people view the pricing. Do you view it on a per game basis? Do you view it on what your invoice says? There was pretty even mixed answers across the board. I will say the way that we do measure your membership is on a per game price. Even though you have a single invoice, we do measure it on a per game basis, and there's reasons why we have to do it. For example, if we play U.S. Open Cup games, we have to pay money to U.S. Soccer, as an example. So we have to sort of subdivide games and pay people for these. So we can't just account for it in the 17 regular season games. But maybe I'll pause there in terms of survey responses. But those survey responses were extremely informative for us.
I'm just trying to remember what answers I gave. I'm for sure I was like, if I can get a discount, I'm in. I know that was one.
Well, I do think maybe just to sort of give your audience a preview, for those of your audience members who are season ticket members, in the next week, they're going to receive information as it relates to, this what we will call the combined sprint and 27-28 season package. And as I said, one of the things that we do, and we don't always talk about it, but we do, is we have to think about it on a per game basis. So for example, in 2026, the per game math is 19 games. It's 17 regular season games and 2 Leagues Cup games. That's the 19. So your membership is based off of 19 matches. So when we compare your per game price to what we'll call the combined membership, which we're going to say is 24 games. So 19 in 2026 compared to 24 games for the combined. Why 24? Well, it's 7 plus the 17 in the 27-28-20 season. But we're going to, and I'm going to come back to this, we're going to begin to detach what we call the tournament matches from the package. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So as a whole, we are going to, and this is across all season ticket products, as a whole, there's going to be an 8% price discount when you take a look at your 2026 per match pricing as compared to the combined price for your 27, 28, and sprint package. So 8% discount as compared to the 19 matches in 2026. So for example, if you've got supporters in your audience, I know you do, supporters will see a 13% average per match price decrease for their, again, as compared to their 2026. Again, the denominator is 19 matches in 2026 and then 24 matches in the combined package. 13% discount's pretty good. Are there some that are closer to flat? Yes, there are. Roughly 12% of the audience is going to, of our season ticket base, has closer to flat. It's still slightly down, but it's even flat we would view as a discount because under normal circumstances, you typically see average increases over year. So as just a general concept, there's going to be a discount applied as, again, our season ticket member feedback was very clear on this point. One of the other things I mentioned was that we're going to detach the U.S. Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and other matches. So again, you have been, as part of your membership package, these games have been contemplating it. But we know as part of the survey, there's people, it's not more than half, but there are people who are interested in not necessarily seeing value in those additional matches. Now, I know you two do, but not everybody did across the survey. And what we want to do is we want to account for that. So we're going to create what we're calling the Tournament Pass. And the Tournament Pass for you guys, if you're interested as season ticket members, depending on where you sit, you'll get a minimum of a 20% discount all the way up to 40%, depending on your price point. You're going to get a 20 to 40% discount. Most people are going to get 20, to be clear, to purchase tickets to these additional matches like Leagues Cup, U.S. Open Cup. You are not required to, but if you want to, you can. And what's interesting about that is that you have been paying full price for these matches previously, but now you're going to be paying discount if you want to. So I'll pause there, but that's an important distinction in our new approach. But we are bundling, we are discounting, and we are separating the tournament matches moving forward.
And will that bundle be kind of like an all or nothing kind of thing where you buy a pass to all of the tournament games?
That is correct. And it will be established at the complete. So for example, at the completion of this year, we're going to see what matches we've qualified for. And then you will be presented with a package that says, I'm making this up. You're going to get presented with a package that includes Leagues Cup matches and CONCACAF Champions League. And it's up to you to decide as to whether or not you are interested in that at a discount. What is separated, as it has been the case all along, our playoffs are a different product altogether.
Right. Okay.
I like your CONCACAF Champions League assumption. You should use that example. It's great. Can't wait to get there.
Can't wait to get back.
That's true.
One other new element that we're introducing is that if you want to pay in full using ACH, so basically wiring, if you want to pay in full upfront, we'll give you an additional 2% discount on top of your discount. This is a new feature. We think some people will be interested in securing that discount, but nonetheless, that's something else that we're going to introduce as part of the membership package.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Sometimes you're a soccer fan, you get great news on a Monday unexpectedly. Sometimes you're looking to buy or sell a home. And if you want that great news to be expected, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Don't get caught offside in this market. Have somebody who understands it and that you can trust.
The right strategy can turn today's opportunity into your winning goal. If you're looking for Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, contact our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Check them out online at sagewilson.com.
But one of the reasons that we started having this conversation about you coming on was the fact that we had the show a couple months ago where people gave their feedback on if they could deliver it, to have a different game day experience, what would they want it to be? And I appreciate you reaching out to us and being like, well, I would like to talk about some of those things. So we're going to do like kind of a rapid fire because it's been pretty meaty so far. But let's go through some of the things we've heard from people that they would like to see. I think that the two of the three that were most common were lower food and beverage prices and more local vendors, but particularly local beer vendors. So you want to start there?
Yeah, so this past year we introduced a season ticket member discount. So that's been in place since the start of the 26th season. I know that that's been used by some. It's probably not been used by as many season ticket members as I'd like to see apply that discount. But season ticket members now have a 10% discount that can be used towards food and beverage purchases. We have always had value offerings since day one, whether it's $6 beer. Now, more recently, we sell some $4 beer outside the stadium before many of our matches. We have value food and food items as well, including kids-focused items. Those have been available. They're not in every single stand, but if you are willing to walk an additional 50 yards, they are available, and we provide locations for how to find those on our website. As it relates to local beer, this year we have like anywhere between 15 and 19 different local beers, depending on the match. That's 19 different local beers. That is in all likelihood maybe as many as 15 to 18 or 19 more than some venues would be willing to provide. And I think where often we see some of the criticism, and I understand it, is it's not in the stand that I want to go to that's right next to my seat location. And that's fair. That's totally fair. But again, there are parts of the stadium where there is more local beer available than perhaps exactly where you're sitting.
Well, I don't mean to like have you call up the map right now, but like just for people who are listening and who are interested in that, can you point to a couple spots where they can most easily be found?
I mean, they're scattered evenly throughout the stadium. I mean, the highest concentration of craft beer is in the sports bar in the north building on the second floor.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we kind of pushed back on when we talked about this on the show was the availability of local stuff. Like, is it fewer or different than before? Yeah, maybe, but there is quite a few. That being said, I totally hear the price complaints, because that local beer is the stuff that I think folks feel the price point on the most.
And this is not easy, but we realize that some people aren't interested in paying for a electric jellyfish. Totally understand that, and that's why we do make available other, significantly lower priced beer. There are lower priced beer options in the stadium.
Well, how about the next? These are kind of related together. So like the water access, I feel like the Yeti cooler stations are super full and super long every time. And then I don't know that I've had this experience, but I think the AC in the bathroom in the south end may not be amazing.
So as it relates to the water, we have added water stations over the years. So there's now a third. One thing that I will point out is that we were the first, if not the first, we were certainly the first MLS to introduce you being able to bring in a vessel like a Yeti to be able to bring in your water or fill up your water at our stations. And I think what you're saying, Jeremiah, is that there are occasionally long lines, as there are occasionally long lines for beer or purchasing a hot dog. And in the same way, there are also moments in the stadium where there are no lines. So I have looked at those water stations quite frequently, 2 minutes into the match or in the 47th minute of the match, there are no lines. And so I recognize this. This is one of the difficult things inside of our stadium with the footprint that we have. You have to appreciate that we have a 24-acre footprint with a requirement to have 8 acres of green space and a little bit of parking. And when you jam everything else in, things start to get a little on the congested side. And not everything can be a no wait environment. And I wish it could. I wish there was you were not butt to butt when you were walking through the concourse on occasion, or that you never had to wait. But there are moments where the wait is 0 time. And I just wanted to highlight that.
That was one of the questions I had about the water. Like is space the limitation as to why there couldn't be more water stations scattered throughout the stadium?
I suppose space is one of the considerations, but again, I think it is that there's pretty even distribution at this point. Listen, we'll continue to take feedback, but I do think this is one where in practical application, it's actually working well, all things considered. I can't account for the fact that it's going to be different on a 105 degree. I mean, I want to account for the fact that it will be different on a 105 degree day than it will be on a 55 degree day. That we recognize, but I do think there's probably some practicality to how it's set up at the moment.
Yeah, from where my seats are, I know where there's like water fountains around, and I know how to get to one of those. I think most of the complaints that we hear about this come from the south end, right, Jeremiah? The supporter section.
Yeah,
where
the
there's
supporter
a
section,
concentration of folks who are maybe exerting themselves a little bit more than the rest of the stadium.
And for what it's worth, that group gets free water. I don't know if people understand that, but our team pays for water to go into the supporter section.
Yeah, and I think that's true, and it's probably the section that's like the least. What's the most time bound, right? Because like you're in a GA spot and you can't just leave and come back. But I want to ask about the concourses, because this was actually, I think this was in my comment that I like pawned off on somebody else, because I hate walking through the North Concourse. So like talk more about, especially on the ends, which seem like they have the most congestion, how like sort of your space limitations keep you away from being able to deliver like what might be an optimal experience in the North End and the South End when you're trying to like just get through.
So as you pointed out, yeah, I mean there is congestion. This is really difficult to create a stadium where you have a finite amount that has to be dedicated to green space, and we want to have at least a 20,000 seat stadium. Before I answer this, it also starts to explain why we don't have a 30,000 seat stadium. Even if we wanted to, there isn't enough room to go wider to develop things that have support for seats. So when you add seats, you have to have the right amount of bathrooms, the right amount of concession environments, and all of that is typically done with width, not necessarily with height. So it's one of our limitations. But as it stands, first of all, we are certainly built within code, and it isn't perfect, Jeremiah. I will agree that the North Concourse does have congestion, but we just have limitations on the amount of space that we can widen it. And I wish we had wider concourses everywhere like we do on the east side, but just based off of how the stadium got built. But this is where I like to say Q2 Stadium is pretty amazing. And if it takes a little bit longer to walk through that area, it's probably it's a compromise that I don't love, but it's one that I think still works.
I know Austin FC fought hard for that specific piece of land, and I'm guessing that's one of the, I guess, limitations that came along with it, is that this is what you have. There's no room to expand in certain directions, and so was it reverse engineered from that, I'm guessing? It
is, and because it's not a perfect square or a perfect rectangle, right? So the 24 acres are not as let's say, they all are usable portions of the 24 acres. But yeah, so you have to design a stadium that fits within that footprint. And I sorry that I keep going back to it, but we also have requirements to have green space, and we have requirements, at least self-imposed requirements, to have parking. Now, I know some people say you need to have more parking on site. We are very happy with the parking levels, that are on site, because it leads to faster egress. So when you leave just about any venue whether you're going to theater or sports, typically anything greater than 5,000 persons, there is almost always a traffic jam on the way out. It's not zero leaving Q2 Stadium, but Q2 Stadium moves out very quickly compared to other 20,000 seat stadiums in the country.
We're a fairly urbanist crew here at Moon Tower Soccer, and so
If
I
you
would
had no
encourage
parking, we'd be fine. Yeah.
yeah, use the train if you can, and if you're having trouble with the train, reach out to representatives and to Cap Metro and let them know, because I think that's part of it, right? Is trying to, I don't know if that's a priority for Austin FC necessarily, but like having that be a part of it is necessary. And so I think supporting local initiatives and local representatives that support public transit can kind of help not only at soccer games but other parts of living in a city. And so there's my urbanist rant for a
Well,
second.
I'm joining you on that rant. You know, we put our money where our mouth is. We invested in the development of that rail station, which not only was a breakthrough for Austin FC and Austin FC matches and Q2 stadium events, but it was a breakthrough for the neighborhood because it supported everybody who lives within that area, created a new mode of transportation. You know, we're huge fans of Cap Metro. Cap Metro is easily providing, 10% of the audience to and fro our stadium for any given Q2 stadium event. And that's significant. That is significant. And the train, again, has been a game changer. That's one of the reasons why the stadium location was perceived to be so great. But it went from being, an A to an A plus once the train station was added.
Well, let's go on some mascot stuff. So I guess the first
hard-hitting questions.
The hard-hitting questions. Yes, we're done with the hard-hitting questions. Now let's go to the dumb questions. But we'll be quick. It's like, this is one that came from Slim Pickens and from Landon Cottom. Bring back Kaiju Dillo. Why do we not have Godzilla Armadillo tearing up the city at halftime every single match?
Oh, so this is great. You guys need to, Landon, maybe you in particular, you need to get proper credit here. You and your very well-mannered rants played the key role in those being resurrected, or in that feature being resurrected. So I think for the last couple of games, hopefully you've noticed that your feedback was heard, and we have reinstalled that Godzilla.
I did notice it for one of the games, and I wasn't sure if it was permanent or not.
It is here to stay. And
I'm very happy to hear that.
You literally get credit for this.
I have other, like the concourse one was also one that I kind of plus one here, and you've confirmed this. I assume there was reasons why that wasn't possible, and then now that the stadium's built, that's not going to change either. But the Kaiju Dillo was one that's like, I think we can change this one.
Yep, you made a persuasive case.
Well, the other one is, so I guess the question is, do you know who Grecky the Grackle is first?
I've heard rumors of this character, but why don't you share with your audience, and then I give you my reaction.
Cigarette smoking Grackle that hangs out in HEB parking lots and looks kind of tough. And as a fan of more mascots rather than less, I would love a Grecky running around for maybe like miscreant adults or teenagers who have lost their way. They need to find a way to have like a mascot they can identify with.
That has like some gritty energy, like the Philadelphia hockey mascot.
Yeah, I love gritty. And it's all right. So this is going to be a live human being playing the role. This is not a scoreboard animation. This is a real live human.
Right. No, this is a real life human.
In a very ratty costume that looks like it
resembles a Grackle. Yeah. Sure. Or vapes. I mean, it's modern.
Maybe a vape fits the energy more.
What if maybe like if somebody misbehaves in the supporter section or elsewhere in the stadium, and maybe this is like part of their their punishment. They have to either wear this costume, or they have to like escort the mascot around just to make sure that they get from point A to point B. I think this stands a really low chance of success if we can be candid in the midst of this interview.
I also, we have Verdissimo, which a lot of folks were against Verdissimo for a while. I think he's won folks over. I have always liked Verdissimo, but if we're talking wrestling language, you can have Verdissimo as your face, and then Gracky can kind of be the heel of the
Yep.
stadium, and like everyone can kind of love to hate Gracky, kind of like we do with the local Grackles here in Austin.
Feel like you're not going to give up on this one. Is this one going to be your new campaign?
This is
I have you here. I wanted to make the pitch.
you,
I
you
also
gave
just
him
say
one win, and now he's never going to stop.
I never should have acknowledged that Landon was the reason for that feature returning. I will say Verdissimo is also great with kids and in school environments and other location, and outside of match day. To your point, yeah, he's grown and found an audience.
Well, I think the last question we have is from Jordan Gibbs, and so his is just more goals. And I asked for this once, and that happened, and it was the other team scoring more goals. So my request would be more Austin FC goals at Q2 Stadium. Can you make that happen?
I wish I could. I agree. There was a year where you should see what like Jim Curtin's teams. Like, there's a year where he led the league I'm pretty sure he was top of the league in goals for and top of the league in goals again.
2022, it was 72 goals, I think.
So this is a question for Jim. Well, it's a question for Davey and then a question for Jim. I have no ability to score goals, but I share that sentiment. By the way, I am a fan of this team as well. So when we don't score goals, it frustrates me the same as it does you.
That is one thing that our jobs are very different, but I think one thing that we share is that our jobs are more fun and easier when the team is good. I imagine that is also true for Andy Loughnane.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever easy, but it's certainly more fun. And I would like to have more fun.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the World Cup. Austin FC is on break. There's still, I'm sure, lots going on behind the scenes, but as far as play on the field, there's a pause in that. But y'all are still getting involved in World Cup activities. I know we have probably this is the understanding a lot of fans have, is there's going to be a couple of days of big activations for the opening games, and then some kind of a second location for the rest of the tournament where we'll kind of be a go-to for watch parties. So explain all that a little bit better than I just did, and tell folks kind of, I guess, what they can expect from it.
You did a great job of explaining it to it, but we are doing a plus-up watch party at Auditorium Shores this Thursday, this Friday. So for the first 2 days of the tournament, we're going to have this grand stage with a giant screen with the cityscape in the background, where we're going to play all the games played on Thursday and all the matches played on Friday. By the way, Canada, Mexico, and U.S. all play across those 2 days. I'm a U.S. fan, and so the big matchup is going to be Friday night at 8 o'clock, with that amazing backdrop in the darkness. I'm imagining, like our goal would be to the point where it is so well attended and it looks amazing that Fox and the big broadcast, they break away and they show the crowd gathering in Austin and showcasing this event. Like, that would be the ideal outcome. You do have to register for the event. Walk-ups are going to be welcome, but you are encouraged to register. And by the way, we've seen over 15,000 registrations for both days. And again, walk-ups are welcome, but you're going to be encouraged to register, and you're also going to be encouraged to show up early to secure your place. So, but walk-ups are welcome. You're just going to need to register when you walk up. But it is free. This is very important. The watch parties are free. So that's the first 2 days, something really big and special happening at Auditorium Shores. And by the way, there are adult activities, there are kids activities, and it starts with the first match of the day. So in the lunchtime, when the first match begins, you can go to Auditorium Shores on both Thursday and Friday, and you can stay there all day, all night, if you would like, for the full slate of action. That's just the first 2 days. Then
for the bigger events on those first 2 days, could we expect something similar to what we saw for the MLS All-Star celebration that was held on that site?
It's the exact same setup, more or less.
Okay. Instead of a band, it's going to be soccer games.
Correct. The stage will be in the same position. And, we are expecting large crowds. So I'm encouraging everybody to register, everybody to arrive as early as you possibly can, because we will have to turn people away at a certain number. So that's the first 2 days, but there are another 37 days after that where we will be activating an all day long, all night long program on the east side at In Cahoots. For those of you who've never been to In Cahoots, it's a bar. It's got kind of an indoor-outdoor aspect to it. It can flex up for the big games, and it'll feel really well attended for some of the smaller games. So TVs will be on inside, outside, drinks, food, and it's also free. And again, you also have to register. You can walk up and register, or you can pre-register. And we encourage anybody to bring a friend, watch whatever game you want to. We think this is going to be World Cup headquarters in Austin for the 37 days of the tournament.
All right, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I know there's a lot of soccer bars in Austin, but I know for these big events that they tend to fill up. You tend to have to get there super early. So I know you mentioned like showing up early for these first two big ones, but I'm glad there's going to be an extra space for just, okay, it's Thursday night, there's a game on. I want to go out and be around people to know that, okay, here's a space that has a bit more room than maybe these other soccer bars will. And I know I can just walk up and watch a game. People should, and I think will, go to these other spots, but the extra capacity will be welcome.
Yeah. And I do think that for those first 2 days, I mean, this is going to be so special. The city has never done anything like this for the Men's World Cup. I do think that it's going to be a spectacle in and of itself. And yeah, we'll see everybody out there Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, Austin shows up for soccer stuff. I was honestly surprised by how well folks showed up for All-Star stuff. And this is I'm not putting any shade on MLS All-Star, but this is a much bigger deal than that. And I'm excited to, again, just like see how the city shows out for it. And I think they will.
I agree. Really looking forward to hosting everybody.
What else we got, Jeremiah?
I think that's it, man. I appreciate, Andy, all your time, all the insights. Look forward to continuing the conversation. Look forward to this kind of finally happening after talking about it a couple times, and just excited about what the future has to offer for this club and this city and what we're all doing together.
You guys are going to love Jim Curtin, and encourage you to sort of pay close attention to his presser. Hopefully there'll be some good nuggets.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Andy. We appreciate it.
This is awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. We want to thank Andy Loughnane for joining us one more time. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come check us out on Instagram. And we were going to do listener questions this week. With this news, we kind of ran out of time for that. So we're going to push the rest of the listener questions to next week. Sorry for the delay once again, but we will get to all of them. Also, if you're a member of the Patreon and you didn't get a question submitted, feel free to continue to do that for the next 7 days, and we'll be able to get to them then. But during that show, Jeremiah is going to be on vacation, and so I will be joined by Stephanie and Michael Crignola. And so we'll get maybe different voices answering your question than you thought was
different
going to
answers.
happen.
Yeah.
All right. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothings, you never.
La gente, oh my God.
Because they love the cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.